parents who had children who were divorced. Because you could even tell when somebody would say they'd be there in church and one of their kids would be with them. And then they would ask about a spouse. And it would be, they're divorced, And we have to put on this whole system of embarrassment. I mean, think about even how we labeled things along the way. We didn't even really say that people were divorced. We just said they had a failed marriage. What a challenging way to be the church for people, oftentimes when they need us the most. And so how do we recapture what that means for us? Clearly, the Bible talks about human community, and it talks about partnerships as a part of that. And we at a place like Bethany know that we have the opportunity to bless those kinds of partnerships when two people find themselves together in marriage. And that should be a cause for celebration for us. But there are times when people just need to know the church is still here for them, no matter what life brings, maybe particularly when it brings separation. Because what happens too often in the midst of that separation is not that two people are separated from one another, and the pain that creates just in those two people, but the reality is nobody gets divorced in a vacuum. It all carries through in ripples in new occasions. There have even been people who write in divorce decrees who gets what friends and who gets what church congregation to be a part of, because they know that being in that space together is going to be difficult. And clearly we all know examples where people have had very, very amicable situations, and it's all moved on smoothly, but that sometimes might be the perception that we see, and not always the reality of pain that enters in. And so I don't think it's an accident, as Mark is recording these words of Jesus, that he records this discourse on divorce that Jesus shares first with the Pharisees and those gathered, and then with his disciples privately, and then Mark goes right into this story. So those of you who are wondering, are we going to talk about the kids, please? We're going to get there now, okay? About Jesus blessing the children, because what we had here were people saying that children were coming to Jesus. And in first century Palestine, as Pastor Nate pointed out just a couple weeks ago, children really weren't supposed to be accounted for much. Barely seen, never heard until they became adults. So really what we're talking about here is people who should not be in a rabbi's presence are being put into a rabbi's presence. People who weren't supposed to be recognized are being recognized completely. And I think that's what happens sometimes with divorced people, is we don't want to recognize the pain that they're in, so it's easier to ignore it. But that's not Jesus' way. Jesus comes and says, when somebody is in pain, where should they be but with me, with my people? When people are hurting the most, that's when my arms are open the widest to invite them into my embrace. I don't think that the harshness of Jesus' words about divorce were meant to be the end message. Clearly, I think that Jesus would say, if at all possible, he would be about the bonding and the fulfillment of relationships. But when that cannot happen, and when pain makes you feel like you're the other, that you're outside of God's accepted place, that's where Jesus says most strongly, let them come to me. If you're a child who doesn't seem like they have a voice in the midst of adults, Jesus says, let that one come to me. If you're a person who's hurting because you've moved from a community or a significant family member has died and you're hurting, Jesus says, let them come to me. And if you're a person whose relationship has ended and you know the pain of separation, Jesus says, let them come to me. And as the people of God, we need to say this is a place where arms are wide open, where pain somehow finds a way to be even shared, because in the sharing of it, it gets fractioned out. You only have to own a little bit of it at that point. And so this is the church, a place where somebody can say, I am divorced, and I'm still here. And in my soul, I'm still whole, but it doesn't mean I might be hurting a little or a lot. And so Jesus' words to us this day are whatever pain you have in your life, but particularly when that pain seems like it's not really recognized well, when it might not be dealt with very well in other parts of your life, bring it here. Bring it to a place where Jesus' love is given without condition, where Jesus' love is celebrated for the people who need it the most. If somebody would say, I'm not sure I can go to church because of what I've been a part of in my life, Jesus would talk to anybody who tried to keep that person away, and Jesus would use his most stern voice and say, this is where they need to be. When I'm hurting, I know that's when Jesus says, my arms are open, as wide as they could possibly be. Come to me, because I am ready to bless you.